Finally, we now know the fate of our flying fields and our hobby as a whole. Hi, and welcome back to the channel. I'm JR, the Traveling Tech Guy. If this is our first time meeting, welcome to the channel. We feature videos on how to get started in the RC hobby cheap, as well as I travel around to different fly-in events to show you what the hobby is all about. So if this interests you, please consider subscribing, hit the bell notification so you won't miss another episode like this one. Let's get right into it. Ever since the NPRM was released in December of 2019, there's been a lot of speculation on whether the hobby was going to cease to exist in favor of drone deliveries at the expense of those who fly RC airplanes and local flying fields. The FAA released a 470-page final rule on December 28, 2020. I did read through all 470 pages of the document. There was some give and there was some take, but overall, I do think that the hobby is going to survive. You may be asking yourself, why was there so many pages in this document? Well, the main reason is the FAA had included a lot of the questions and concerns that over 53,000 of the hobbyists, those in the industry, as well as big companies, posed to the FAA during the time that they opened up for comments from the public. Fortunately, the FAA was listening and took all of our comments to heart and made some changes to the final rule. Instead of repeating the same information that you can find in other videos here on YouTube covering the final rule, I'm going to solely focus on clubs and flying fields and what the final rule means to them. Right off the bat, the FAA removed the limited remote ID from the final rule that would require network access to a remote ID service center at the same time that your aircraft is broadcasting a signal of its location. The limited remote ID rule didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, as most flying fields are out in locations where internet and cellular service are either non-existent or spotty at best. Even in areas where network access is available, asking a club to take on the extra cost of network infrastructure, especially for smaller clubs, could be unaffordable. In the NPRM, it was proposing to eventually do away with all flying sites and not accept any further new applications. It also further proposed that if a club failed to register their site to the FAA within 120 days after the rule was released, they couldn't register their site and become a FAA recognized identification area, or FRIA. Likewise, a club has 48 months before they have to renew their flying site. If they failed to do so, they couldn't renew their flying site and thus would lose the site and nobody could fly at that flying field any longer. The FAA also eased up on the restrictions on when it comes to terminations of a flying site, either by a club or by some kind of safety or security concerns by the FAA. Previously, in the NPRM, there was no way you could appeal it. Once it was gone, it was gone. The FAA also eased up on the restrictions when it comes to termination of a flying site, either by a club or the FAA citing safety or security concerns. Let's say your club has to move to a new site because you're losing your lease or you found a better place to fly. You can terminate your designation at your current site, move to your new site, get set up, and reapply. And as long as there's no safety or security concerns, chances are you're going to get approved. And if a site is terminated by the FAA for whatever reason, such as security or safety concerns, if a club can demonstrate that they have taken care and addressed those concerns and they're no longer present, the FAA can come back and re-grant you designated status. Although the FAA is not going to grant FRIA status to temporary sites, they have created a pathway for special fly-ins like charity events to be applied for. They've also maintained the 400-foot flight level that we can go up to over our flying fields. On another positive note, control line and free flight, they weren't even included in on the final rule, as they didn't even meet the criteria requiring remote ID. If you're just getting started in the hobby and you worry about that you're going to be limited to just flying at a FRIA, don't despair, because in the future, all of the manufactured models will come with some type of remote ID technology built in. So you'll have the best of both worlds. You can fly at a flying site, or you can go to a park, pasture, or even your backyard and still be in compliance and fly. One of the biggest questions that come to my mind, out of the 2,400 AMA chartered flying sites, how many will actually receive FRIA statuses? The FAA has come back and said that 98% of the 2,400 current flying sites would be granted FRIA status, that only 2% for either security or safety concerns would not be granted. Now, some of the reasons why a flying site could possibly not be granted designation as a FRIA would be if they're located in an airport. Now, in my own opinion, if a current flying site is located in an airport and they have an excellent safety record, then I think the FAA should handle that on a case-by-case basis and look into their safety record. If they've had no accidents out there, nothing between manned and unmanned, then I think the FAA, in my opinion again, should grant them FRIA statuses. I want to take this opportunity to send a special shout out to the A.M.A. for all of their tireless efforts in getting the rules changed so we can keep our flying sites and our hobby alive. If you haven't heard of the A.M.A. or you haven't seen what they do for our hobby, I'll put a link down in the description. Go check them out. I, for one, am very thankful that the FAA has realized that flying sites are necessary and essential to the survival of our hobby. Now, with all of the new remote ID technology that will be coming down the pipelines in the next few years, it should make it easy for all RC pilots to continue flying while being compliant. Whether you fly in your backyard or at a local field, let me know down in the comments your thoughts about the final rule. I'll see you at the field.